Yo, here we go. Alright, you can go ahead and start.
Hi and welcome to Mong's workshop. In this episode I'm going to show you how to make the Dragonbone Greatsword from Skyrim. Now, this Greatsword is made mainly out of balsa wood, which is a really lightweight wood used in model planes, RC model planes and such. I made it out of this material because I think it kind of looks like, well, it doesn't quite look like Dragonbone, but as close as wood gets. And it's really easy to work with, and I think, yeah, it adds a lot of details. So, in this first part of the Dragonbone Greatsword build, I'm going to show you how to make basically this, the blade, the handguard, the handle and the pommel. I'm going to split this video up in two because this took quite a long time. I think I used about 2 hours just to cut out and shape the blade, and the rest on the details. So, in this first part, I'm going to show you how to do this. Yeah, let's get going.
Now, most of the ideas on how to build this greatsword I got from Alpharaptor's awesome tutorial on the greatsword, which you can see here in 3 parts. I put a little spin of my own on it, so a few things are different. But I used his template for the blade because that was really detailed, the only detailed picture I basically found of it online. So yeah, I'm gonna link to that in the description down below. Now take a screen as big as you can get. I used a 32-inch flat screen TV, but smaller screen also works. It just gets a little bit more cumbersome. And trace out a template. Now you're gonna need to trace out a couple of templates, one for the sword, one for the metal bit on the sword, and one for the handle and the details. Make sure that you get all the details so you don't have to go back and do this again. And this is how it's supposed to look. For this project I'm going to use balsa wood, and you're going to need 10 of the 6mm balsa wood planks and 4 of the 2mm balsa wood planks. You can easily find them online, as you can see here, and you're going to glue together 4 of the 6mm pieces and 4 of the 6mm pieces in this order, as you can see. 1 for the handguard and 1 for the blade. You can use basic super glue for this, works really good, and yeah, that's about it. Now that you've glued the balsa wood together and made the template, it's time to cut it out. And to do that, I need some more space. So I've set up a table outside, and yeah, because it's finally good weather here in Norway, we're gonna do that. Now, the cutting out of the template is basically self-explanatory. Just be accurate and you'll be fine. Now take the template and draw it onto the balsa wood. As you can see, the blade is actually too long to fit onto one plank, so I just cut it up in 2 pieces. I cut it out using a jigsaw blade just for more accuracy, and here you can see I'm gluing the end piece of the blade onto the blade with super glue. For the metal part on the blade, you're gonna use the 2mm balsa wood. This is material so thin that you can actually cut it with the X-Acto knife, so you don't have to use a saw. Now that you've cut out all the pieces of the wood, it's time to start shaping the blade to an edge. I started doing this with the X-Acto knife, but I found out that the edge of this tends to go down against the edge of the blade, and that doesn't look good, and well, they wear out pretty easily against this type of wood. So I'm going to use this. This is basically just a razor blade with some duct tape on it, and yeah, just start shaping. Be careful. Probably a good idea to
go over a spare piece of balsa wood and try to cut that, so you get the feel of how much force you're gonna need. But yeah, let's get going.
Now, as you can see, this material cuts really easily, and it's really fun to work with. But as you can see, I'm not being that accurate with my cuts, because when I'm going to sand this down, it will hide all of my crimes, and you won't even notice the choppiness of what I'm doing here. So yeah, just cut it into the basic shape that you want and sand it down. As you can see, I'm cutting against myself, and you're not supposed to do that. And this is what happens when you cut against yourself.
Now, I'm gonna cut out the jagged edges in the wood. As you can see, I've shaped both sides of the wood now, and that turned out pretty good. But it's time to cut these out so I can shape them to the rest. So yeah, let's get going.
When you're done cutting out the edges, you're gonna shape it, and as you can see, I'm still cutting against myself. But yeah, if something breaks off, as you can see it did here, just apply some super glue to it, and it will be like, yeah, when you sand it down, you won't even notice. So that's pretty cool.
Now, I've sanded down the entire thing using 120 sandpaper, and then gone over it with 1200, just because that's the finest I had. And now I'm going to make the, well, in these indents there are actually curves into the wood. And I'm gonna try to replicate that using this stick. Now, this stick is just basically 1200 sandpaper glued onto a stirring stick with some spray glue. So I'm gonna try that and see if it works. Yeah. Now I've finished sanding down the blade. Turned out pretty good, and I finished it with the stick, and that turned out really good, as you can see here. And that's just what I want, because then I can go over it later with some paint and some darker paint in these edges, so it stands out really good. Now it's time to do the handguard, and I took the template for the handguard handle and the pommel, and basically just tagged it onto the end of the blade. This part is gonna be covered up, so the marks doesn't really matter. And then I'm gonna take the offcuts of wood that we got from making the blade, and just basically trace the end of trace the end of the pommel on the end of the handguard onto this, cut it out, and glue it on with some crazy glue. So yeah, let's do it.
Now, as you can see here, I'm using baking soda to basically accelerate the super glue. This is a trick I learned on Tested, and it works really good. It also works if you want to build a little bit in the creases that the wood leaves. So just fill it with some baking powder or baking soda, and fill it in with some super glue, and just sand it down and it will be smooth. Now for the handle, I just took the piece of double 6mm balsa wood that I have left over, and draw two two pieces of the handle onto this and cut it out using the hacksaw. Here you see I got a hacksaw that I can actually change the angle on, and that helped a lot. Now that you got both of the pieces of the handle cut out, just clean up your work area and apply some glue along the edges. Sprinkle some baking powder on it, baking soda, and glue these two pieces together. Now to keep pressure on it, I used a shelf panel just to squish it all down, and there you got it. Now to make the hole in the pommel, I'm going to use a Forstner bit. This is actually a pretty good tool to use on soft wood, as it doesn't stress the material. And now I'm just figuring out how to fasten this to the actual blade. I'm going to drill two holes, one in the blade and one in the handle, and then screw in a screw in the handle, as you can see here, drilling the hole and screwing in a screw, and cutting off the top of the screw to make it basically a steel rod, so I can put the handle onto the blade with some hot glue and some super glue. Now, the next part in making the handle and the pommel and the handguard is cutting out two pieces of that's gonna go over here. I'm gonna take the template that I've used for the handguard and just cut two pieces of 6mm balsa wood and glue them onto each side so it gets flush with the handle. And with the handle I'm going to make into a hexagonal shape. By basically tracing out the middle, parting this up in three parts, and then cutting it sideways with a hacksaw that I used for the rest of it. And yeah, that's about it. So let's get started. Now for the details on the handguard, I'm going to use the 2mm balsa wood and just cut this out of the template.
to make the handle, as you can see on this picture, it's a hexagonal handle, so I'm gonna cut this, and that's why I made it 4 of the pieces. As you can see here, there are 4 pieces of 6mm balsa wood. So yeah, what I'm gonna do is trace out this and into the middle of this, just draw a straight line down there, cut into the wood so that I can cut out this part, and same on the other side, so it gets hexagonal.
Now, as you can see here, I'm drawing the center line, and here I'm drawing the line that I'm gonna make into the 3 parts. I figured out that this is gonna be a 3-part 8mm, so piece it into 3 parts that's equally 8mm on the inside. And then just take a razor blade and cut it out. And when you've done that on all the pieces, you can just sand it down with some 120 sandpaper and then 1200 sandpaper.
Now for the rings on the handle, I tried to make them out of the balsa wood, but that wouldn't, I couldn't get it perfect, so it was kind of, it didn't go so well. So I cut that off, and I'm gonna try to make it out of thermoplastic instead. So I'm gonna heat this up and try to make that ring. Yeah, let's do it!
Now just take the thermoplastic and heat it up. I used about 10 tablespoons of thermoplastic for each ring. Roll it into a snake and just drape it around the handle. As you can see here, I'm using my fingers for the rough parts of the of this shape, and then I'm going to go over it with a stirring stick just to remove the finger marks, fingerprints on the thermoplastic.
The night he came.
Now, there we go. The thermoplastic rings actually looks better than I thought they would. They kind of look like bit metal, and that's basically the look we're going for. So I'm gonna keep those, and I'm gonna do the same on the ring on pommel. This I'm gonna reinforce with some copper wire just to keep it steady while it cools down, and have a means to mount it to the actual handle. So yeah, let's do it.
Now the first thing you want to do is take 1.5 meter of the copper wire, piece it up in 2, and just use a drill to roll it into stronger copper wire. Take that and half it again and do the same. Then just take the metal wire and shape it into the ring using the template. Cut off the balsa wood ring and drill a hole in the handle. Then fill the hole in the handle with some hot glue, put the metal ring in it and make sure it sits so we can build the thermoplastic around it without basically moving it. Then just take the same amount of thermoplastic that I used on the rings on the handle and drape it around the metal ring and make sure it is round enough to imitate the beaten metal on the actual sword. As you can see here, I'm using a heat gun to heat up the thermoplastic again, so I can mold it a little bit more, because it cools down pretty easily.
And that's that. This is as far as I'm gonna go in this video. I'm gonna make another part of this video where I add the details and paint it and just finish the blade basically. But first part, pretty happy with myself. The handle is not that nice, but it works. I'm gonna try to finish it with black that actually hides a bit of my cards. The blade I'm really happy about. This turned out just beautiful. And the great thing about balsa wood is if these pieces break off, you can just add a little bit of super glue and glue them back on. It doesn't really notice. But yeah, really happy with myself, and I'll see you in part 2.